carry on conversation. Nice to see an assembly of devotees like this. It's been a long time. A long time. Everyone's got their bandit masks on. But what can you do? After some time, it'll get back to fully the way it was before, hopefully. At least as far as public assembly. As most of you know, we've been reading from Ramayana, and the version that I've been reading from is this one. The author is Krishna Dharma Prabhu. He's a Prabhupada disciple, lives in the UK, and he's written something like, he's a good writer. Mahabharata and Ramayana are his two works. They're very vast literatures. He, in the Ramayana version that he's written, he's primarily drawn from Valmiki Ramayana, but he mixes in other things. We came across one of them the other day, and we came across one of them yesterday. And there's several others. But one of them we came across the other day was he mixed in something that's from Ramcharitmanas, or Tulsi Ramayana, and Valmiki Ramayana. And he didn't say what he was doing, so we kind of got spun out. In Tulsi's Ramayana, Ravan is shot, and the arrow of Ram hits him in his navel, and there's a celestial nectar that Vibhishan told him is placed in his navel to protect him, so his heads keep growing back and things like that. It's not in Valmiki Ramayana. But in this reading, or writing, he shoots him in the chest, it rips open his heart, according to what's told here, because Vibhishan told him that's why he can't be, his arms keep coming back and his heads keep coming back because of that. It's in his heart, and, pierce it and he'll lose his life. So, Valmiki Ramayana doesn't say anything about celestial nectar in his heart either, or his navel. It just says his heart was ripped open by Ram's arrow. So that was one. And then another one came yesterday. At the end of yesterday's reading, there's the final sentence is just before returning to Ayodhya, Sita enters into the fire and comes out of the fire, etc. And everything is nice because it gets really scary for a while. And it says in this version that Ram and Sita took rest in Vibhishan's palace at night before returning to Ayodhya. So a question was raised, what? It says earlier in this section, when Vibhishan was installed as the king, Ram wasn't there. He sent Lakshman because he stayed outside Lanka because of his exile vow. Same as he did in Kishkinda. He stayed outside of Kishkinda because of his exile vow. But then here it says he went into Vibhishan's palace to take rest for the night before going back to Ayodhya. So that was like, what? And after some research, I don't know, because I didn't follow that thread, what it says in any of the other versions of Ramayana, but it's not in Valmiki Ramayana. He did not go into Lanka. He was in the island and outside the city gates, but he didn't go inside. Or it's not in Valmiki Ramayana. That was one of the questions that came. And then another one of the questions that came was, did Ram really disavow Sita? Did he say all those heavy, harsh things? And the answer is yes. So I'm going to now read shortly from the whole section again. It's unfiltered. It's not as distilled down, because he has done that. Krishna Dharma has done that. Some places where it's actual dialogue written by Valmiki, he summarizes, and accurately. But I'm going to read the actual. This is from 2 Princeton University professors. I don't have access, but somebody I know has access, and he cut and sent me their description of what he's called conversations just before returning to Ayodhya, after the battle and before returning. I'm just going to read it again, so we get the actual Valmiki Ramayana rendering. And there's one other question that arose. Yeah. One of the questions that arose was, since the time of the Ashvamedha Yajna of Dasarath, and they sent the challenge horse around for a whole year, going everywhere to all the kings, why Ravana didn't challenge the challenge horse? And then, really short answer is they didn't cross the ocean. That's the short answer. They didn't, if he had wanted to know, he wouldn't have been able to find out, because he didn't cross the ocean. Now, it doesn't say what about in Janastan, because Janastan was part of the capital. When Ayodhya was founded, there's a history. Dandak Forest was named after one of the sons of Ikshvaku, whose name was Nanda. Are you taking notes? Oh, wow. Danda. He was given the name Danda because he was really bad. He had to be reprimanded with a stick. So they gave him the name Danda. And Ikshvaku gave him a kingdom that was in the forest, which became later known as the Dandak Forest. But sure enough, he was capable. He was the son of Ikshvaku, and Ikshvaku is the son of the sun god, or Vivaswan, or Vivasvatamanu. Vivasvatamanu. So he was a capable personality, Danda. He built up in the forest, big palace, big kingdom, this and that. But being, a Danda type person, he violated a woman, and for that, the daughter of a great sage. So the daughter of the great sage cursed him and cursed the whole forest, and his whole entourage of sages in the forest. He told them, in a short time, this is all going to be a conflagration. Leave now. Well, get while the getting's good. And they left. And it became destroyed with blight, and later became just like an abandoned forest. And then over time became Dandak, Aranya, forest. And that was later inhabited, at least a part of it. Maybe you've seen pictures or maps of where the Dandak forest was. It's a very, very large tract of land in central South Asia. Dandak forest, stretching, up into Madhya Pradesh. And Janistan was a part of that. And that's where Kara and Dushan stayed. And so apparently the Ashvamedha Yagya horse wasn't sent to the Dandak forest because they surely would have challenged. So that was an answer to that question. So a few devotees very kindly, somebody from Bangalore sent me a series of quotes directly from a Valmiki Ramayana on this topic, and so but I'm not going to read all those. Lal Gopal sent some also, and the language of that translation that he has is not the same as this these two professors. It's really nice English. So it's many pages long, and I'm going to read those many pages. So it's very similar to what we read yesterday, but it's more expanded. Sarga 101 from the section with the battle. Hanuman's been Ravana's been killed. Hanuman is sent by Ram to go find Sita. Let her know that Ram is there and is victorious, and Ravana is dead, and let her know what has happened, and bring back her message. Those two instructions. Instructed in this fashion and honored by the night-roaming Rakshasas, Hanuman, son of Maruta, entered the city of Lanka, which tells us he was outside the city. Entering Ravana's palace, the hero of immense blazing energy spied Sita, who resembled the constellation Rohini, cut off from her lord, the hair-marked moon. Hair-marked moon means there's a part of the moon that looks like rabbit ears from the earth. Have you seen maybe on a full moon? It looks like rabbit ears. So the hair-marked. Hair is a rabbit. And occluded by a malevolent planet. That's Ravan. Now, it says, so I'm anticipating all these technical questions, it says she was in Ravana's palace. We normally hear she's in the Ashok garden under the Sasupta tree. So which is it? And I don't know. I'm just reading what Valmiki Ramayana translation says. Modest, humble, and deferential, that's Hanuman, he approached her, greeting her respectfully, and began to tell her everything that Ram had said. Ram is quite well, Vaidehi, as are Sugriva and Lakshmana, having slain his foe, and having thus accomplished his purpose, that tamer of his enemies inquires after your well-being. With Vibhishan as his ally, and together with the tawny monkeys, Ram, through the wise counsel of Lakshman, has slain Ravana, O queen. Inquiring as to your well-being, the mighty hero Ram, delight of the Raghus, greatly delighted, his heart having achieved its purpose, now says this to you. Quote, I bring you this good news, my lady, and once again I offer my respectful salutations. Thank God, O knower of righteousness, you have survived by virtue of my victory in battle. We have gained victory, Sita. You may now be at ease and free from care. My enemy Ravana has been slain, and Lanka is under my control. With grim determination to win you back, without pause, even for sleep, I built a bridge across the mighty ocean, and thus fulfilled my vow. Nor should you have any further anxiety about staying in Ravana's palace, for the lordship of Lanka has now been made over to Vibhishan. So trusting in that, be comforted, for now you are living in your own home, as it were. Moreover, in great delight, he is on his way, eager to see you. Addressed in this fashion, Sita, whose face was like the hair-marked moon, sprang to her feet, speechless with joy. Since Sita did not reply, that foremost of tawny monkeys said, "What are you worried about, O Queen? Why do you not speak to me?" Addressed in this fashion by Hanuman, Sita, so firmly grounded in righteousness, replied, in the greatest delight, with a voice that was choked with joy, quote, "When I heard the wonderful news concerning my husband's victory, I was overwhelmed with joy and momentarily speechless. Even upon reflection, O leaping monkey, I can think of no adequate response to you, who have brought me this wonderful news. Nor, gentle monkey, can I think of anything on this earth to give you for reporting this news, so wonderful for me, that would be fitting and adequate. Neither gold nor silver, various gems, or even the kingship over the three worlds can be said to be equal to this." Addressed in this fashion by Sita Vaidehi, the leaping monkey cupped his hands in reverence and standing before her replied with these words, quote, "You alone are capable of speaking such affectionate words. You who are so devoted to your husband's welfare and have longed for his victory. Indeed, these words of yours, gentle lady, so affectionate and full of meaning, are more precious to me than a heap of all kinds of jewels and even the kingship of the gods. In that I see Ram still standing, after having slain his enemy and gained victory. I have truly attained already those treasured things, such as the kingship of the gods and the like. However, if you permit me, I should like to kill all these Rakshasa women who previously threatened you. Please grant me this request. These cruel and horrible Rakshasa women, with their dreadful rumors, their fierce glances and terrifying threats, tormented you, who are so devoted to your husband when you are suffering in the Ashok Grove. I would really like to slaughter them with different types of blows. Illustrious and lovely queen, these creatures have done you such injury. I would like to slaughter them with punches, slaps, kicks, fearsome blows to the knees, slashes of my fangs, biting off their ears and noses, tearing out their hair, violently clawing, dreadful flying kicks, and many more of these kinds of assaults. Addressed in this fashion by Hanuman, the illustrious Vaidehi, daughter of Janaka, responded to him in words that were keeping with righteousness. Who, foremost of monkeys, could be angry at servant women? For as mere functionaries and dependent on the king, they are obedient to act only on the orders of another. It is as a consequence of my evil destiny and my own misdeeds in the past that I have suffered all of this. For one always experiences the fruits of one's actions. I have concluded that to suffer this as a consequence of my fate and being helpless, I had to endure all of this here at the hands of Ravana's servant women. These Rakshasa women tormented only on the order of Ravana. Now that he has been slain foremost of monkeys, they will not torment me anymore. There is an ancient verse in keeping with righteousness that a bear once recited in the presence of a tiger. No reference what that thing was. Hear it from me now, O leaping monkey. Quote, a superior person never, the word that's used here is requites, or, dispatches, or renders evil on the part of evildoers with evil. Don't do tit for tat. Don't take revenge on evildoers. This rule of conduct must always be adhered to, for good conduct is the ornament of the virtuous. There seems to be a theme in scriptures about this, because it does happen. Sometimes people do very hurtful things, whether it's unintentional or intentional. Sometimes that happens, and Dhruva is a super example of that. Twice and 4 times he's told the same thing by his mother, by Narada, then again later by Swayambhu Manu, then again later by Kuvera, in his life. Don't react in a get back mentality, but rather, so how do you? She's recommending, as a virtuous personality, or unto persons who wish to become virtuous, things are coming my way because of my past deeds, and I accept it. And I don't want to retaliate against, and then there's other things specifically in what she's saying. A noble person must act compassionately, whether people are wicked, virtuous, or even deserving of death. No one is entirely innocent. One should not harm the Rakshasas, who can take on any form at will and take pleasure in injuring people, even when they do evil. That was her response, so I want to let him have it. When he was addressed in this fashion, Ram's illustrious wife Sita, eloquent Hanuman replied to her, "You are a fitting, illustrious, and righteous wife to Ram. Please, give me your return message, Queen, and I shall go to where Raghava is." When Vaidehi, Janaka's daughter, had been addressed in this fashion, she said, "Foremost of monkeys, I wish to see my husband." When Hanuman, son of Pavana, heard these words of hers, that immensely splendid hero said these words, lifting Maithili's spirits. "Noble lady, just as the goddess Sachi gazes upon Indra, lord of the 30 gods, you shall gaze upon Ram, whose face is like a full moon, whose allies are staunch, whose enemies have been slain, and who is accompanied by Lakshmana." When he had spoken in this fashion to Sita, who was as radiant as Shri incarnate, the immensely swift Hanuman returned to where Raghava waited. So that was one sarga, beginning to end. Here's the next sarga 101. Approaching the exceedingly wise Ram, foremost of all bowmen, the leaping monkey, who understood the matter at hand, addressed him with these words, "Now you really must see Queen Maithili, who has been tormented with grief, she on whose account we undertook this entire mission and achieved the culmination of our efforts. For Maithili, who has been overwhelmed with grief, her eyes brimming with tears, was filled with joy upon hearing of your victory. Since she trusted me because of my confidence, the confidence I had earlier inspired in her, she said to me," because this was the second of the two, what is her message? I desire to see my husband, who, together with Lakshman, has accomplished his purpose. Addressed in this fashion by Hanuman, Ram, foremost among upholders of righteousness, was suddenly plunged into gloomy thought and became somewhat tearful. That this human side, the righteous king side, heaving long, hot sighs and staring at the ground, he spoke to Vibhishan, who stood beside him, looking like a great storm cloud. Have Sita Vaidehi come here anointed with celestial unguents, adorned with celestial ornaments, her hair freshly washed. Make haste. Addressed in this fashion by Ram, Vibhishan, hurrying, entered the inner apartments, and there had his own wives instruct Sita in these words. Vaidehi, anointed with celestial unguents and adorned with celestial ornaments, you are to mount a carriage, for, bless you, your husband desires to see you. Addressed in this fashion, Vaidehi replied to Vibhishan, but I wish to see my husband without having bathed, Lord of the Rakshasas. When Vibhishan heard those words of hers, he replied, you should do exactly as your husband Ram says. Upon hearing those words of his, virtuous Maithili, whose husband was her god, and whose vow was devotion to him, responded, so be it. Young women then washed her hair and adorned her with costly garments and ornaments. Then Vibhishan took Sita with him, and having her mount a shining palanquin that was draped in costly fabrics and guarded by many Rakshasas. Approaching the great man, Ram, and noting that he was lost in brooding thought, he bowed at Vibhishan and in great delight announced that Sita had come. But when Raghava heard that she, who had dwelt so long in the Rakshas's house, had come, three emotions, joy, sorrow, and anger, took hold of him. Now this is rasa, he's not like, this is the transcendental Ram, not the mundane one. But then, perceiving that Vibhishan now stood beside him, Raghava, miserable and debating inwardly, spoke to him. He's the omniscient Lord, and he's selecting from the menu of possibilities of how to speak and act, discriminating. Gentle Lord of the Rakshasas, ever dedicated to my victory, please bring Vaidehi to me at once. Heeding those words of Raghava, Vibhishan quickly made an effort to have the area cleared on every side. Guards wearing armor and turbans and holding staves and drums in their hands began to move about there, clearing the area on every side. Then, being driven back on every side, the crowd of apes, monkeys, and Rakshasas withdrew to a distance. And as they were all being driven back, there arose a sound like the roar of the ocean, being whipped up by a gale. But when Ravana saw them being driven back in great agitation on all sides, he stopped it out of kindness and because he could not abide it. Furious, Ram spoke reproachful words to the immensely wise Vibhishan, seeming almost to burn him up with his eyes. Why are you harassing these people with complete disregard for my wishes? Stop this business at once. These people are like my own kin. It is not houses, garments, high walls, curtains, and such royal treatment as this that shields a woman. It is her virtuous conduct alone. Moreover, there is nothing wrong with a woman being seen in public during emergencies, periods of hardship, in times of war, and at a ceremony of choosing her husband, during a sacrifice, or at a wedding ceremony. She has been through a war and has been placed in tremendous hardship. Therefore, there would be nothing wrong in her being seen publicly, especially in my company, because she's not been seen by the people. Raman made sure of that on purpose. So bring her here into my presence at once, Vibhishan. Let Sita see me surrounded by the hosts of my friends. Addressed in this fashion by Ram, Vibhishan, reflecting on all of this, obediently led Sita into his presence. And as for Lakshman, Sugriva, and the leaping monkey Hanuman, they too became deeply troubled upon hearing Ram's words. Because of his demeanor that was so pitiless and seemed to show no regard for his wife, they inferred that Raghava was displeased with Sita. Trying to make her body appear small in her shame, Maithili, followed by Vibhishan, approached her husband. Covering her face with her garment, in shame, there before the assembled people, she wept as she came near her husband, murmuring, "My noble husband." She whose husband was her divinity, and whose face was more radiant than the moon, gazed upon the moon-like face of her husband with amazement, joy, and love. Then, gazing upon her beloved's face, which she had not seen for so long, and which was as lovely as the full moon rising, she shed her depression of spirit, and her face became radiant as the hair-marked moon. That was Sarga 102. There's Sarga 103. As he gazed upon Maithili, who stood so meekly beside him, Ram began to speak as rage simmered in his heart. "So, here you are, my good woman. I have won you back after conquering my enemy in battle. Whatever there was to be done through manly valor, I have now accomplished. I have wiped clean the affront, and so my wrath is appeased, for I have eliminated both the insult and my enemy at the same time. Today my manly valor has been witnessed. Today my efforts have borne fruit. Today, having fulfilled my vow here, I am once more master of myself." Here comes the heavy part. "You were carried off by that wanton Rakshasa when you were left alone, but now, through manly actions, I have expunged that affront brought about by fate. What human purpose can man serve if his spirit is so feeble that he will not wipe clean through his own blazing energy an insult he has received? The leaping of the ocean and the raising of Lanka today, those praiseworthy deeds of Hanuman have borne fruit. Today, through their valor in battle and their beneficial counsel to me, the efforts of Sugriva and his army have borne fruit as well. And the efforts of my devoted Vibhishan, who abandoned his evil brother and came to me of his own accord, have likewise borne fruit." As Ram was saying these words in that fashion, Sita, wide-eyed like a doe, was overcome with tears. But as Ram gazed upon her, his anger flared up once more, like the raging flames of a blazing fire, drenched with melted butter. Knitting his brow on his forehead and glancing at her from the corner of his eye, he spoke harshly to Sita, there in the midst of the monkeys and Rakshasas. Quote, "In wiping away this affront, Sita, I have accomplished all that a man could do. In my wrath, I have won you back from the hands of my enemy, just as, Through his austerities, the contemplative sage Agastya won back the southern lands that had been inaccessible to all beings. Bless you. But let it be understood that it was not on your account that I undertook the effort of this war, now brought to completion through the valor of my allies. Instead, I did all this in order to protect my reputation and in every way to wipe clean the insult and disgrace to my illustrious lineage. Since, however, your virtue is now in doubt, your presence has become as profoundly disagreeable to me as is a bright lamp to a man afflicted with the disease of the eye. Go, therefore, as you please, daughter of Janaka. You have my permission. Here are the 10 directions. I have no further use for you, my good woman. For what powerful man, born in a respectable family, his heart tinged with affection, would take back a woman who has lived in the house of another man? How could I, who boast of my noble lineage, possibly take you back, just risen from Ravana's lap and gazed upon by his lustful eye? I have recovered my reputation, and that is the purpose for which I won you back. I do not love you any more. Go hence wherever you like. I've made up my mind in saying this, my good woman. Turn your thoughts toward Lakshman or Bharata as you please. Or Sita, set your mind on Sugriva, Lord of the Monkeys, or on the Rakshasa Lord Vibhishan, or on whomever you please. For surely, Sita, once Ravana had seen you, so enchanting with your heavenly beauty, he would not long have left you unmolested while you were dwelling in his house. When Maithili, who deserved to hear only kind words, had heard those cruel words of her beloved after such a long time, she shed tears and trembled violently, like a Valari creeper struck down by the trunk of an elephant lord. End of Sarga 103. Sarga 104. When Vaidehi was addressed in this cruel and horrifying manner by the furious Raghava, she was deeply wounded. Hearing those cutting words of her husband, words such as she had never heard before, in the presence of that great multitude, Maithili was overcome with shame. Pierced, as it were, by those verbal barbs, the daughter of Janaka seemed to shrink within herself and gave way to bitter tears. Wiping her tear-stained face, she replied softly to her husband in a faltering voice, "How can you, heroic prince, speak to me with such cutting and improper words, painful to the ears, as some vulgar man might speak to his vulgar wife? I am not as you think of me, great armed prince. You must believe in me, for I swear to you by my own virtue. You harbor suspicion against all women because of the conduct of the vulgar ones. If you really knew me, you would abandon your suspicion. If I came into contact with another's body against my will, Lord, I had no choice in this matter. It is fate that was to blame. My heart, which I do not control, was always devoted to you. I could not control my body, which was in the power of another. What could I have done? If, my love, you do not truly know me despite our long-nurtured love and intimacy, then surely I am lost forever. When you dispatched the hero Hanuman to search for me, why, heroic prince, did you not repudiate me then, while I was being held in Lanka? No sooner had I heard your words to that effect, heroic prince, then, abandoned by you, I would have abandoned my own life, right before the eyes of that monkey lord. Then you would not have to risk your life in a useless effort, nor would your allies have to suffer hardship to no purpose. But now, tiger among men, you have given way to anger, like some lesser man, taking into account only that I am a woman. Since my name is derived from King Janak, you fail to take into account the fact that I was born from the earth itself, nor, though you are an expert judge of conduct, have you given due consideration to my virtuous conduct. Moreover, you do not weigh the fact that, as a boy, you firmly clasped my hand while I was but a child. My devotion, my virtuous conduct, you have turned your back on all of that. As she was speaking in this fashion, Sita turned, weeping, to Lakshmana, who stood there, despondent and brooding. Then she spoke, her voice choked with tears. Saumitri, build me a pyre, the only remedy for this calamity. I cannot bear to live, tainted by these false allegations. Rejected in this public gathering by my husband, who is not satisfied with my virtues, I shall enter the fire, bearer of oblations, so that I may follow the only path proper for me. When Lakshmana, slayer of enemy heroes, had been addressed in that fashion by Vaidehi, he was overcome with anger and closely studied Raghava's face. But, sensing Ram's intentions, which were betrayed by his facial expressions, mighty Saumitri, obedient to Ram's wishes, built the pyre. Then, Vaidehi slowly and reverently circumambulated Ram, whose face was downcast, and approached the blazing fire, eater of oblations. After making her obeisances to the gods and the Brahmins, mightily cupped her hands in reverence, and in the presence of Agni said this: Since my heart has never once strayed from Raghava, so may Agni the purifier, witness of all the worlds, protect me in every way. When she had spoken in this fashion, Vaidehi reverently circumambulated the fire, eater of oblations. Then, with complete detachment, she entered the blazing flames. The vast crowd assembled there, filled with children, and the aged watched as mightily entered the fire, eater of oblations, and Sita entered the fire. A deafening and prodigious cry of "Alas, alas!" arose from the Rakshasas and the monkeys. You can't stop there, right? That's the end of Sarga 104. Sarga 105, verse 1. Then King Kuvera, Vaishravana, Yama the dragger of his foes, great Indra of the 1,000 eyes, Varuna, scorcher of his foes, the great god majestic Shiva with his 3 eyes and the bull on his banner, and Brahma, the foremost of those who know the Vedas, the creator of the entire universe. All these assembled in their flying chariots, as radiant as the sun, and coming to the city of Lanka, they approached Raghava. Then, raising their broad arms, covered with bracelets, the foremost of these 30 gods addressed Raghava, who stood before them, his hands cupped in reverence. Quote, "How can you, the creator of the entire universe, the most ancient one and foremost amongst those possessing supreme knowledge, stand by and watch Sita fall into the fire, eater of oblations? How can you not realize that you are the foremost among the host of the gods? Long ago, you were the Vasu Rita Dharman, Rita Dharman, the progenitor of the Vasus." So the Vasus are celestial warriors. And there's 8 principal ones, and he was the progenitor of all of them. "You are the primal creator of the 3 worlds, the untrammeled Lord. You are Rudra, the 8th among the Rudras. And you are 5th among the Sadyas. The twin Ashvinis are your ears, the moon and the sun your eyes. You are present before the beginning and after the end of the world, scorcher of your foes. And yet, like some ordinary man, you ignore Vaidehi." Then comes a celebrated verse. "When Rama Raghava, the Lord of the world, was addressed in this fashion by those guardians of the world, that foremost of those who uphold righteousness said to the foremost of the 30 gods," this is the celebrated verse, where he's personally saying his worldliness. "I think of myself only as a man, Rama, the son of Dasarath. May the blessed Lord please tell me who I am really, and to whom I belong, and why I am here." Now that's a different translation than some other translations. I'll read the one that Malgopal sent. "I think of myself as a human being by the name Ram, the son of Dasarath. You, as a gracious divinity, tell me that which I, as such, am really like this." So, am I really? You're saying I'm all these things. I'm, Vishnu and this and that. I see myself as the son of Dasarath. Now, this is the theme that goes back and forth, meaning sometimes and sometimes and sometimes and sometimes, kind of oscillating or toggling back and forth between divinity and worldly. One of the commentaries, I was trying to remember which was the section, but he's exhibiting both at the same time. It's part of the charm of Ramayana, is the human-likeness of Ram and his emotions and his dealings, and the divinity woven into it. At least this is an often commented upon little statement that Ram is making about himself. Okay, so we're going on. As Kakutsta, that's one of the predecessor, the ancestors in this line of Ikshvaku. So sometimes a person in a certain line is given the name of the person, the great noble ancestor. Like following Janak, kings of Mithila were also called Janak. They had their name. A nice example of this, an easy example, is towards the end of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, Krishna makes a journey to go visit the king of Mithila. In some places he's addressed as Janak, in some places he's addressed as Bahulashva, because he's Bahulashva. but because he's in the line of King Janak, he's also called Janak. So sometimes devotee asks, wow, how long did Janak live? Was he around when Krishna was around? The kings in the line of Janak were called Janak. And they also had their name. It's just one of those things. So, as Kakutsta Ram was speaking in this fashion, Brahma, the foremost of those who know the Vedas, said to him, "Truly, valorous Ram, now hear the truth from me. You are a god, the majestic Lord Narayana, wielder of the discus," usually carrying a bow, not a discus. "You are the single-tusked boar, and the conqueror of your enemies, past and future. You are the imperishable Brahman, existent in the beginning, the middle, and the end. You are the highest governing principle of all the worlds, the four-armed Vishvaksena. You are the wielder of the horn bow. You are Rishikesha, the primeval person, the supreme spirit. You are Vishnu, the invincible wielder of the sword. And you are Krishna, of immense strength. You are the leader of the hosts. You are the leader of all beings. You are intelligence, strength, forbearance." He goes on. It says a whole page of all the things. "I am your heart, Ram. Your tongue is the goddess Saraswati. It is I, Brahma, O Lord, who made the gods, who are the hairs of your limbs. When you close your eyes, it is night. When you open them, it is day. Your ritual practices are the ordinances of the Vedas. Without you, there is nothing. Your body is this world. Your steadfastness, the earth. Agni is your wrath. Soma, your gentleness, O bearer of the Srivatsa mark. In ancient times, you spanned the three worlds with as many strides. After confining the great Asura Bali, you made great Indra king. Sita is Lakshmi. You are the god Vishnu. You are Krishna. You are the Prajapati, the Lord of creatures. It was in order to slay Ravana that you entered a human body here. Entered a human body. Thus, you have accomplished our purpose, foremost of upholders of righteousness. Ravan has been slain. Now, Ram, in your delight, please return to heaven. Your strength and might have not been in vain, nor has your valor, nor will men who are devoted to you ever fail in their purpose. You are the ancient God and the Supreme Spirit, with capital letters. Those who are firmly devoted to you, and those men who praise you, will never fail in any way. We're almost done. That was the end of Sarga 105, and the final reading for this evening, Sarga 106. Upon hearing that auspicious speech uttered by Grandfather Brahma, Agni, the shining god of fire, arose, holding Vaidehi at his side. Adorned with ornaments of burnished gold and clad in a red garment, the young woman was as radiant as the rising sun. Her hair was dark and curling, and her garland and ornaments were unsinged. Her mind was calm, and she looked unchanged. Holding Vaidehi at his side, Agni, the shining god of fire, gave her back to Ram. Then Agni, the purifier and witness of all the world, spoke to Ram, saying, "Here is your Vaidehi, Ram. She has committed no sin. She is of pure conduct and of high moral character, and has never betrayed you by word, thought, imagination, or even glance. When you left her alone, she was carried off, helpless and sorrowful, from the deserted forest by the Rakshasa Ravana, arrogant in his power. Hidden and imprisoned in the inner apartments, doesn't say the Ashok garden, thinking only of you and having you for her only recourse, she was guarded by hordes of hideous Rakshasa women, dreadful to behold. Although she was enticed and threatened in various ways, Maithili would not even think of the Rakshasa, since her heart was utterly devoted to you. You must take her back, Raghava, for her heart is pure and she is free from sin. I am giving you an order. There's nothing further to be said. Unquote. When Ram, of immense blazing energy, steadfast and firm in his valor, had been addressed in this fashion, that foremost of those who maintain righteousness replied to that most eminent among the 30 men, the 30 gods. Quote, unquestionably Sita needed to be proven innocent before the three worlds, since this auspicious woman had long dwelt in Ravana's inner apartments. For surely had I not put Janaki to test, the virtuous would have said of me, Dasara's son Ram is a lustful fool. I know full well that Janaka's daughter Maithili could give her heart to no other, since she is devoted to me and obeys my every thought. But in order that the three worlds too should have faith in her, I, whose ultimate recourse is truth, simply stood by as Vaidehi entered the fire, eater of oblations. Ravana could no more have violated that wide-eyed lady, protected by her own blazing energy, than could the mighty ocean violate its shore. That evil-minded wretch was incapable of assaulting Maithili, even in his thoughts, for she is unapproachable as a blazing flame of fire. This auspicious woman could never have been ruled over Ravana's inner apartments, for she is as inseparable from me as its radiance is radiance from the sun, bringer of light. Janaka's daughter, Maithili, has been proven innocent before the three worlds, and I am no more able to give her up than a self-controlled man his good name. Moreover, I must follow the good advice that all of you affectionate friends, respected throughout the worlds, have uttered in this fashion for my own good. When he uttered these words, mighty Ram, praised by his mighty companions for the fear he had accomplished, was reunited with his beloved. Then Raghava experienced the happiness he so richly deserved. It's kind of, I think, a good thing because we have so many young people here. Were you able to follow? And looking at you three girls in the front row here, you were able to follow, or were you distracted? Follow. So that means if I ask you some questions, you'll be able to answer, right? If I ask you... Easy to listen? Were you able to pay attention? That was a yes? Uh-huh. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. Uh-oh. Aside from addressing Sita as Sita, can you name two other names by which she was addressed? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay, that's good. Just keeping you guys on your toes. It was, I think it was a nice thing to do. Tomorrow we'll go on to the journey back to Ayodhya. But to hear it again is because it's so rich and meaningful. Uh, Ram didn't say to Sita, go into the fire. He said some other heavy things, but it was she who decided. So the question was, how can you allow her to enter into the fire? That's what the gods were saying, Indra and Brahma. And he allowed it. It doesn't say specifically that she understood that's what he wanted. It doesn't say specifically that Lakshman understood that's what he wanted. But they have some. There's intimacy in their loving relation. And when there's intimacy in loving relation, one can understand the heart and the mind of another. That the externals don't show, but they had some understanding. We can assume that safely. Now, one by the arrangements of the internal potency of the Lord, and she's Sita is the internal potency of the Lord. By the agency of the internal potency of the Lord, she can understand or not understand his inner purposes. I mean, because at least I'm more accustomed to hearing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan than Lord Ramachandra's pastimes in a different yuga. But in Vrindavan, sometimes sometimes chief personalities, they understand, some don't understand Krishna's intention. Like, did Krishna eat dirt, and what Mother Jasoda thought, and when she saw what she saw, and so on. It's all the movements of the internal potency taking her through a whole range of emotion, of ecstasy as a mother towards her son. He's not her son, but she has that mood that this is my son, and so she went for a ride. An ecstasy ride in different emotions. So it's not always that those who are intimately connected with the Lord will understand him, but they're experiencing something, for sure. So it seems that Lakshman had that understanding the intention of Ram. He built the fire. That must have been tough for Lakshman to build the fire. What to speak of everybody standing around and watching Sita enter into the fire. Whew. Anyway, a very emotion-filled scene, and mission accomplished. So let's see if there's some discussion. We have good number of people here in the audience, so I'm sure there's going to be some discussion.
Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, I'm thinking for group of women who were abused with...
There's something wrong with our microphone system. It's not something new. There's something wrong with our microphone system. Try again.
Group of...
Try again.
Lord Rama rejected. So I'm thinking about the women, many women who went through many different kind of abuse without their willingness and permission, and they are being rejected by their loved one or dear one. And when they hear about this particular pastime, I feel that it's sometimes very difficult to understand or even receive the message from this particular pastime.
It's
How they can
understandable. What you're
process.
saying is very understandable. Purification is sometimes, difficult or uncomfortable or painful. But it's natural on the one hand to have something get triggered by something that looks like an unpleasant experience in life, or others that we know who have had such unpleasant experiences in life, and to be able to relate to it in a wholesome way. But it's just like, Krishna leaving Vrindavan. That can trigger some other similar emotions, or the way Krishna spoke to Rukmini, saying, I'm unworthy of you, and better you find somebody who's worthy of you. And she fainted, felt like a banana tree cut. So the exchanges of the Transcendental Lord with his internal potency, just as Brahma is saying, she's Shri and you're Vishnu, so accept her back. You're the Supreme Lord, and I'm ordering you. What a transgression! But you're saying you're the son of Dasarath. I'm giving you an instruction. I'm one of the gods. I'm giving you an instruction. So it's loving exchange, and it's not like the worldly things. And that's part of the transcendental journey, is to and if it's difficult in the course of the transcendental journey to deal with certain passages. I was having a really hard time reading all the battle scene. Gosh. And then it didn't stop. It kept going and on and on and on and on and on. So the way to get on the other side of that is this is the personality of Godhead giving protection in the case of the battle, and his intention is not anything but proving to the world her sanctity. Now that's one of the reasons why I asked for these two documents of why Sita was yet again sent away. How have learned persons looked at that or explained it? So I don't know if you had a chance to read through those. You had a chance to read through those? Krishna Swarup, you sent those out to others, right? Krishna Swarup, you sent those to others? So you sent it. Did you get a chance to read through those? Oh, it's not like, oh, okay, that now I feel good. That's not what's gonna happen, but it gives a transcendental perspective. A transcendental perspective means, exactly what Sita said. Now, she's the goddess of fortune, so what misdeeds does she have in her past to have to go through some difficulty? But she's speaking in that way. And Ram speaks in that way about himself. It's to help us understand how to deal with reversals, using Prabhupada's term. But so it's loving exchange. The higher principle is loving exchange, although it may not look like it from a worldly perspective. It looks painful. Krishna's leaving Vrindavan. It's painful. because he's their life and soul. And he's wound them into his network of love so that whatever their different relationships and rasas are, he's their everything, and he leaves. How painful. And it's an interest. So his promise to return is what sustains their life, and it looks like he's not returning, and it looks like he's not returning. So Uddhava comes, and then later Balaram comes, and finally he comes. It's just it's a transcendental loving exchange that may look like and to us feel like something that's a worldly thing that we know we've been through or somebody's been through, and it's like it's raw and it hurts. But how to understand the transcendentalness? I mean, for Gandhi, who loved Bhagavad Gita, I read in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, he writes, if there was such a thing as a Kurukshetra battle, and Krishna induced Arjuna to fight the Kurukshetra battle, I reject my Hinduism. Like, he just couldn't even look at it. And, we have a very different picture. For him, that was his trigger. For somebody else, it's so. How do we understand the transcendent Lord? If you get close to someone, you'll see things that, like, wait a minute. But it's not like our experience. Our experience is the perverted reflection of that which is pure. So, what's pure? Is pure having a battle? Is pure saying to Sita what he said? And on the other side, he wanted the world to know. And he knew that she would not come out. No, he could have said something else. He could have said, I want you to prove your purity. So see that, let's have Lakshman build a fire, and you go into the fire, and you come back out of the fire, and everyone will know that that's not the way it happened. But he could have done it any way he wanted to do it, and that's the way, he did it. She's not going to leave him, and he's not going to leave her, but he said it. And who can imagine what she felt? And she acted the way that a perfectly virtuous person. There's nothing left for me in this life. It's kind of like what Sati did, entering and just burning her body in fire because it's connected to you. I don't want anything to do with this body. And then she came back as Parvati. So in summary, the thoughts and the feelings that you expressed, they're natural. And all that I'm saying is there's a way of spiritualizing or transcendentalizing such experiences. And one way is to stay away from those sections of the scripture. And the other is you try to see the transcendentalness of those exchanges. In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, there's a very nice section where Narada Muni is describing Krishna's pastimes to Gopakumar. And he hasn't gone to Vrindavan yet, but he's describing what it's like in Vrindavan. And when he starts to describe Krishna's leaving Vrindavan, he says, Vinarda says to Gopakumar, normally we don't talk about these things because people will start to think, oh no, if I become attached to Krishna, look what's going to happen. I'm not going to become attached to Krishna. I'll have to go through all that. So normally one doesn't say these things. And once the door opens, he a whole long thing he says. He can't stop talking about it. Because there's a transcendental loving exchange that's there that is, bittersweet. But it's the most sweet thing. The love and separation is the most sweet thing. But to a worldly person, his point is, to a worldly person, it looks just bitter, no sweet. It's like that Rupa Goswami celebrated verse, my dear friend, one girl to another girl, if you would at all desire to maintain family affection, don't go to Keshigat. Because there's at Keshigat, the banks of Keshigat, there's a young boy. He's playing upon his flute, and he'll steal your mind away from any of those things, so don't go there. And that's what these narrations in the higher picture of things are meant to do. It's not Ram was cruel, but it looks like, how he could just say something like that and not be cruel? It was cruel. And the gods say, and everyone's telling him. But he had his purpose. So some will criticizing him for allowing him to do that. Some will criticize him for speaking to her the way that she did. And some would criticize him for, getting again with Sita because she's been with Ravana. He touched her. And and she was out of the home because that's Vedic culture. So you can't be connected again with such a person. So that it can be criticized or criticized. So it's not simply, another question I'm anticipating is, because it came up the other day, how much do you factor in what the the blah blah people have to say about what you do and what you don't do? We discussed this. Kings have to take that into consideration. It's not the only factor, but he did it in a transcendental way. The solace is seeing the transcendental essence, and in seeing the transcendental essence, it's letting go of, the other way of seeing things. Something that I've been appreciating is the repetitiveness of the message of detachment from the tendency to be the enjoyer of the temporary. It's over and over and over and over, and just keep coming like waves of a river. The Bhagavatam is filled with it, and the Ramayana is filled with it, and scriptures are filled with it, and the Upanishads are filled with it, and everything's filled with it. So, yes, we still maintain attachment. So what's the option? I mean, letting go is an option, but you have to take shelter of something to let go, to really continue to let go. And this is to help us in that letting go. It's part of the sojourn of connecting with transcendence and taking full shelter there. It's not like the material, although it may look like the material. It's not. It's part of the journey. And out of frustration, some people just, want to be spiritual, so they go to the mountains and live in a cave. They don't read Ramayana. They just do their austerities, and that's not going to take them beyond the temporary. So what's the beyond the temporary? It's these narrations, and then it looks like something material, like there's a battle. I went through that in college. When I was in college, the war in Vietnam was going on. It was a big deal. And, the whole of Bhagavad Gita is a war. Like, forget it. That was a passing stage. I said, wait a minute. I asked myself, why are you reacting like this? It's a book. Why are you getting all worked up? Because that was a product of my times. War is bad. War is bad. So what's the difference between a war that's bad and this? Why is it such like a book of wisdom? Why is it considered spiritual? You have to go beyond the emotion of material conditioning to get to transcendence. And for different people, it's different things, and then there is transcendence. There is a place of shelter, but it's to understand that the Supreme Lord is all merciful, and His actions are for uplifting those who He's interacting with, or those remotely like us, and through those who He's directly interacting, it's helping to uplift those who are remote. It's not what it looks like. Look like, wow, how can he say that? And which is what Sita said. After what I've been through, for you to speak like this, you're like a vulgar man, treating me like a vulgar woman. This isn't right. You're not a vulgar man, and I'm not a vulgar woman. Why are you speaking like this? So that was her humanness, human as if. But then anyway, so it played out the way it played out. This is the only righteous solution left for me: give up my body, build a fire, Lakshman. Poor Lakshman. Anything else? Keep speaking. You should adjust the volume over there.
Section is so detailed that I felt like I was able to visualize what was going on. Yet it was very emotional too.
Yeah, very emotional.
I was thinking about Mother Sita's speaking when Lord Ram was planning to leave her behind while he was going to exile. She put forth a lot of questions, and finally
Change the volume over there. Move it down. Keep speaking.
finally she was able to convince Lord Ram to take her with him. But in this context, she's also asking a lot of questions here too. One came, I am daughter of Janaka. I know she's also putting a lot of questions, but she does not wait for an answer for this. She just getting into appreciating that the section, Maharaj. My question is, when Lavan Kusha was with Valmiki ashram, Valmiki narrated the Ramayana story to them. So the question is, when did Valmiki wrote this? Is it was concurrently when it was happening, or it's already because Lord Brahma gave him a boon that you'll be able to see exactly
Yes,
what
he
happened.
did. So that's an interesting question. My understanding is this. this is now from one Vaishnava authority, that Valmiki saw and met Ram before he wrote Ramayana. When did he see and meet Ram? Ram was in exile on his way to Chitrakoot. After leaving the ashram of Bharadwaj Muni, he visited the ashram of Valmiki. And there Valmiki saw Ram. And he saw Ram before he wrote Ramayana. This is what one Vaishnava scholar I heard said. Now, I don't know what the basis of that is. I just know what he said. And so then his austerity, when he speaks to Narada in the beginning parts of Ramayana, who is that person who is ideal in the following ways? It's Ram. So Ram was already living. Valmiki had already met him. Ram had already been performing pastimes. So some of it, exactly the chronology of when it was written, were some of the pastimes continuing into the future. In other words, Ram ruled for a long time. And Lava and Kush were there when they heard Ramayana while he was still a king. So somewhere after apparently, this is one of those, there isn't any place that I know of where it's clearly spelled out the answer to your question. I'm just piecing things together. After they met, but while Ram was still ruling, that's when it was written. When he did, saw the crunch of birds and had this experience. And then he wrote. Another important thing to bear in mind is this. The Ramayana is an eternal literature. He wrote it down. He wrote down parts of it, but according to Madhvacharya, there's a version of Ramayana in the heavenly realm, and there's a version of Ramayana that's even beyond the heavenly realm. It's like 1 million verses or something like that. So it's a history that's eternal. So then zoom back into, at what point in time did Valmiki write it? Or, the portion of it that he did write, the portion of the bigger Ramayana that he did write. He gave 100,000 verses to Narada, it is said, by Madhvacharya. Brahma gave 100,000 verses to Narada. Narada gave a portion to Valmiki. Valmiki wrote. So, now the essence of the question is not when it was done. I was spending some time on that. But it's his realization. He was given the benediction to understand all these things. Feel it. To know the feelings and the hearts and the minds of everybody in all of this. So therefore he could describe them. He felt this and he was feeling that, and it wasn't just creative, it was he could feel it. So is there some part left in your question that hasn't been touched on? Yes, good. Okay. We have a very temperamental microphone, but we'll try again. Let's see if there's somebody else that wants to speak something.
All right.
Go ahead.
Throughout Ramayana, we've seen that Lord Ram has displayed both divine qualities and humane qualities.
Thank you.
And many of the exalted personalities, they've addressed Lord Ram as the divine.
Yes.
But
Towards the end. Not throughout.
But did Lord Ram ever personally address himself or express himself as the Supreme Person?
One passage that comes to mind in response to your question is after finding that Sita is gone and, feeling despair, then he gets into another mood. He's going to destroy the universe. And Lakshman has to calm him down. And it works. He gets calmed down. Thank you, Lakshman. Let's go find Sita. So that's one place where he's expressing himself as the Lord. Another comes to mind is where they're contemplating crossing to Lanka, and Ram speaks in words of divinity. Look, I mean to say, look, I can destroy the whole universe, the whole of Lanka. I don't need a whole army to help me do this. So please don't be worried, because they're worried that maybe Vibhishan is a bad guy and he's going to disrupt things, and don't worry. So he speaks in a divinity voice, first person. It moves. There's probably others that I'm not thinking of at the moment. Anything else? Okay, let's see if there's something online. Nothing online. Okay. Tomorrow evening, back to Ayodhya. Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Ramachandra ki, Gaur Premanandi.